With the wide publicity given to Rambo, few people would have failed to hear of the all-fighting, invincible character brought to the screen by Sylvester Stallone. Ocean, catching on to the Rambo bandwagon, released their binary interpretation of Stallone's blockbuster. Rambo was produced by Platinum Productions and published by Ocean Software for the ZX Spectrum in 1985 and then the Amstrad CPC and Commodore 64 in 1986. The plot of the film follows the film quite closely. John Rambo is a veteran of the Vietnamese War, a jungle fighter drafted back into service to perform a reconnaissance mission to a prisoner of war camp. His instructions are to gain entry, take some photos, and get out without engaging the enemy or being noticed. If Rambo is spotted, it would jeopardise the prisoner's chances of rescue and could lead to their deaths. In the film, our hero begins his adventure by skulking into the camp and manages to stick to his orders until he spots his old war comrade Banks tied to a bamboo cross. Unable to leave his old pal dying in the sun, Rambo disobeys his orders and rescues his friend. The enemy, of course, spot this, and much blood-splashing carnage and mayhem is the result. Swiftly, Rambo returns to the helicopter that airdropped him and makes the pilot fly back to the camp for a quick and successful attempt at rescuing the prisoners. Then, pausing briefly to tackle an enemy gunship that tries to blast him out of the sky, Rambo and the rescued prisoners fly to Thailand. Well, that's the theory, and if you complete the game, that's what should happen.
What most people call hell, he calls home. No man, no law, no war can stop him. Sylvester Stallone is back as Rambo. First Blood, Part 2.
So in my little video, we'll look at all the 3 game versions released by Ocean. So let's muscle up and start by looking at the ZX Spectrum version. The creators of the game were David J. Anderson and Frederick David Thorpe at Platinum Productions. So in the game, the jungle scenery scrolls around our hero in the action screen. The viewpoint from which the game is played is above and behind the hero, creating a pseudo 3D effect. Rambo can move around in the 8 normal joystick directions, but may come to halt when he reaches the edge of the jungle. Now, Rambo's not the only person in the jungle, it's full of enemy soldiers sneaking about. Now, this is a combat game, so Rambo's inventory keeps a track of his kills, as well as displaying the weapons he collects. In the game, you start off with knives and grenades. Apart from knives and grenades, you may find other weapons lying about on the jungle floor, including a bow and explosive arrows, a machine gun, and a rocket launcher. Brilliant. All the weapons have seemingly endless supply of ammo, but only one weapon can be used at a time. Now, be a little bit careful because these grenades, although they're deadly, they do make a noise, and it does tend to attract the baddies to your location. Whereas the knives, well, they're silent. If you throw a knife in the direction that Rambo is facing, any bad guy it travels over is killed and your score increases by 10 points. If, on the other hand, a baddie should shoot or stroll through you, you don't survive the encounter. All the same though, the man is tough and you get 4 lives. Just like the real Rambo, he's tough with 4 lives too. Now, Rambo starts his mission outside the enemy camp and must get inside via a small entrance on the right hand fence. You rescue Banks by running over him and then you run to the helicopter which is due north. The helicopter then needs to be flown to the large H landing pad in the jungle from where the hostages can be liberated using the rocket launcher. And on the trip home with the helicopter filled with the good guys, a gunship attacks. The view is similar to the jungle and camp scenes, but a helicopter replaces Rambo in the plain area. All very simple, but all very exciting. The game was one of the first to feature controllable vehicles, example the helicopter, and also one of the first to feature stealth elements. Eat dirt, Metal Gear Solid, eat dirt. I have to say I quite liked this game. Although it was absent in music, Ocean's interpretation of Rambo recreates Commando fairly closely. Rambo on the ZX Spectrum is not as good as Commando, but it is a very good film tie-in for the price. And it does actually have something to do with the film, which does make a change. Okay, the screen area is a bit too small for a good shoot 'em up, which is what Rambo really is, and it tends to scroll from side to side constantly, which gets very annoying at times. Rambo runs around in a very Commando-like style, with trees and bushes all drawn in detail. It is a bit odd the way our hero is always carrying a machine gun, even when he hasn't picked it up, and it would be a good touch if Rambo actually carried weapons on screen when he picks them up. But never mind, there are some good touches. I like the way you use a knife to free your fellow soldiers and the use of a helicopter to rescue others. I wouldn't advise you to buy Rambo as well as Commando, but instead of it, it adds an extra dimension to the arcade game while retaining a number of similarities. So, there you go. That was the ZX Spectrum game. Now on to the Commodore 64. Now, the first thing that you notice on the Commodore 64's version is the brilliant music. The music is by Martin Galway from Northern Ireland, incorporating melodies from the film's score. For me, the epic soundtrack really elevates the gameplay. And with regards to the sounds in the game, they're also pretty good. Definitely a lot better than the ZX Spectrum, I have to say. Anyway, let's have a quick look at the game before I give my overall thoughts. Okay, so that's the Commodore 64. It's certainly a better sounding game. But it's not just the sound that I was impressed with, I have to say the animation is smooth. The characters are clearly visible and easy to distinguish. Okay, the background is somewhat repetitive, but it's still very solid. Now, the game is certainly a lot busier compared to the ZX Spectrum. There's a lot on the screen at the same time here. But that all adds to the excitement. Gameplay, it's pretty okay, with smooth scrolling and responsive movement and shooting. Pretty good stuff, really. Perhaps where it starts to falter in a bit is the difficulty. It's quite a hard game. It's harder than the ZX Spectrum. Overall though, in saying that, it's a pretty good version of Rambo. It's a good game. Good job. Okay, finally here we are onto the Amstrad CPC version of Rambo First Blood Part 2. Again, I quite like the music. I actually prefer the music on this version to the Commodore 64. It does actually sound more like the Rambo soundtrack. The music was played and recorded live by Choice Software's in-house programmer, designer, musician, James Edward Cosby, who was also from Northern Ireland. Good job, James, good job. So anyway, let's have a quick look at the game. Okay, so what did I think of this version? Well, firstly, it does have a small window to play on, similar to the ZX Spectrum. I liked the graphics, they were okay, maybe not quite as good as the Commodore 64, but I have to say there was one annoying part of the game that frustrated me, and that's that the game was quite flickery and slightly difficult to control. For me, this kind of affected the overall gameplay and fun factor of the game. These bloody enemies just seem to flick suddenly onto the screen, making it difficult to shoot before they shot me. This was certainly less notable on the ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64 versions. However, saying all that, overall it's not a bad game. Now, Rambo was well received. Your Sinclair described it as a thinking man's commando. The game starts fast and gets faster until you end up like a one-man whirlwind. Rambo develops into a solid shoot-'em-up. Well, there you go. Rambo replaced Commando as the #1 game in the Gallup ZX Spectrum chart and did the same in the Commodore 64 and the All Formats charts the following week. The Amstrad CPC version also went on to #1 8 weeks later, replacing Yi Ar Kung Fu. Hope I said that right. Both the Amstrad CPC and ZX Spectrum versions of the game were included on the 1986 compilation They Sold a Million 3, along with Fighter Pilot, Ghostbusters and Kung Fu Master. In 1989, Ocean released the game alongside Daley Thompson's Decathlon Enduro Racer as one of the launch titles for the new budget range, the Hit Squad. It reached #4 in the All Formats Budget Games chart. Nice. Okay, so finally, what are my thoughts on ranking these games? Firstly, I want to say I liked all three games. They're all good and worthy of your collection, to be honest with you. Each one has its good and weak points, I would say. The ZX Spectrum, it doesn't have a soundtrack and it does have a small window to play on, but the game does play well. The Commodore 64, it has a good soundtrack and good graphics, but it is also slightly difficult to play. Rambo on the Amstrad was colourful and it had pretty good graphics, but it was difficult to play due to the flickery and small screen. And for me, I preferred playing the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64 versions. Therefore, for that reason, I'm placing the Amstrad version of Rambo in third. It's not a bad game though, I have to say, just not quite as playable as the other two. And for the ZX Spectrum, I'm placing this #2. It just can't beat the Commodore 64. The Commodore 64, although difficult to play, it felt more like an arcade game with its graphics, sound and speed. So there you go, the Commodore 64 is the winner. Now remember folks, this is just my opinion. My opinion is not necessarily yours. It's just all for a bit of fun. However, I would be very interested in what your thoughts of this game is. What would you place #1, #2 and #3? Please let me know. So I hope you liked my video. If you did, then please press that like button. And finally, don't forget to subscribe. That would be nice. Okay folks, until my next video, take care of yourselves. See you all soon. Bye bye.